All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Demian, and I'm joined here with my good friend, Renji Matthew, and our co host for today. We're going to be talking about the different ways to invest into real estate. We've talked about on previous episodes, about why we like real estate investing, why we encourage people to get into it. And today we're going to break down like all the different ways that you can actually make money investing in real estate. And there may be more than you realize. So the list that we're going to talk about today is going to be the BRRRR method, the BRRRR method. We're going to talk about fix and flips. We're going to talk about buy and hold, Airbnb, Section 8, multifamily. We're going to talk a little bit about creative finance. We're going to talk about real estate syndication, investing in land, commercial real estate, wholesaling, and bird dogging. So we've got a big a big agenda for today, and hopefully we're going to knock it out in under 30 minutes, which is always our goal. So Renji, why don't you go ahead and start us off? I guess if you want, go ahead and just pick any of the topics, and we can kind of just dive in and start talking about that one. And we'll keep each one to maybe a few minutes or so and kind of go from there. But which one do you want to start with talking about first for you?
I can start with BRRRR, which is what we do. BRRR, which stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So this is where you buy a property, and we'll talk about the ones that you need money for and the ones you don't need money for. But yeah, in a BRRRR method, you need money because you're buying a property, you're rehabbing it, fixing it up with whatever you need to. Then you rent it. Once you rent it, now like the value of that property is higher than what you bought it at because you fixed it up. All the problems that it had, you fixed up. Now the value of the house is higher than what you bought it at. Now, when you refinance, you're going to get more money in the property than what it was when you bought it. Because the whole goal of doing a BRRRR, you're trying to get a property for way below value. You're trying to find it from either distress sellers or whatever it may be. It needs to be fixed up, and that's why you're getting it for a cheaper rate. And then once you fix it up, the value of the house goes up. So now when you refinance, you're going to get more money in it than what you put in. And then you repeat. You do the same thing because now you have money. Once you refinance, then you could do another property again. And
Sure.
that's what we do. And then with the BRRRR method, there's a few other ways you could do things too. There's some people do something called house hacking, where this is where either you buy a duplex or even a single family, you fix it up. Either if it's a duplex, you fix up one, and then you rent that out while you fix up the other and live there. And it's while they fix up the property and rent it out and everything. So then they can move to another property while they rent this one out too. Then there's turnkey, which turnkey, a true turnkey property is one that's already been fixed up. They already have tenants in there paying rent, and then they give it to you. I've talked to a lot of people that I get deals sent to me a lot, and a lot of times when they say turnkey, they don't have tenants in there. It's just fixed up and ready to be rented. But true turnkey is it's already got a renter in there, so you don't have to do anything. Just buy it. So it will cost more at that point because it's already fixed up and has a renter in there. But yeah, that's again, we're not going in depth on each of these, so we'll just keep it short there.
The next ones we'll talk about then would be fix and flips. And this is buying essentially a distressed property, fixing it up, and then flipping it and just immediately getting out of it. And typically, investors will be inside of these properties for probably within, I guess, 2 to 12 months. Like the idea is to quickly buy a house that is not worth as much as it could be because there's things that need repaired or replaced or totally renovated, and then quickly renovating it and then selling it as quick as possible to take that profit and to move on to the next one. So that's the fix and flips. Renji, how about like buy and hold? What does that strategy mean?
Buy and hold is the same as BRRRR, where you're buying a property, you're fixing it up, and you're holding it, right? And then the BRRRR method is just going beyond the buy and hold, where you're refinancing and repeating the process. So it's the same thing there. Yeah,
And
you
then the
want
next,
Airbnb?
yeah, with Airbnb, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with buy and hold, but You're with Airbnb, you're getting a property with the intention of putting it on Airbnb and having it more as like a short term rental for people to, either stay in over the weekend, if they're on a vacation or on a trip, and or to potentially longer stays, like 1, 2, or maybe 3 weeks long. Airbnb is a platform that allows you to list your properties on there to be able to have short-term rentals with. And then talk to us about Section 8, Renji,
Yeah,
and what that is, how that works.
yeah, and I kind of want to add on to the Airbnb. There's, I think, other websites also like VRBO and stuff like that that do similar things. And a little bit more on Airbnb. There's people that do regular Airbnb where they buy a property, they fix it up, and they Airbnb it themselves. Then there's also people that do Airbnb arbitrage, which is where they rent a property, so they're not actually, but you have to let the owners know that what you're going to do, and then that rental they're taking and Airbnbing it, so they're not having to own the property either. But yeah, I just wanted to add that on there because, again, we're trying to provide you guys value so you know what you can do with it. Section 8. Again, Section 8 is also just a single family home. It could actually be multifamily too, but most of the time it's a single family. And it's approved by the government for low or no income people to live in. And it's approved by the government for them to have the government pay their rent. So you're getting paid on the behalf of the tenants from the government for their rent. And this is actually how we got into real estate. Our first couple of properties were Section 8. And it's not always the best properties or the best tenants, but I'll tell you this. When COVID happened, they were probably the only properties that were paying consistently because they're not paying, the government's paying for it. Because we had a bunch of tenants that couldn't pay, and we couldn't evict them because they had the memorandum at that time and everything. But the
Mhm.
Section 8s kept us afloat. So something to think about. It's guaranteed income.
Absolutely. And then on the multifamily and or apartments. So multifamily is defined as at least four or more doors, I believe. Might even be two or more doors. But anytime you have multiple doors or multiple units inside of one potential investment property is deemed a multifamily. Some of the benefits to this is obviously you're not just relying upon one renter. You could have, anywhere from two renters to upwards of a thousand, right? Depending on how large maybe the apartment complex is. So this is the way that most people kind of scale into. It's not usually the first investment property for, a starting out individual, but once you start to get the hang of how real estate investing works, you can scale into multifamily. And then obviously, depending on the size of the complex or the building or the units, can determine your income and your income capacity with your investment as well. Anything else you want to add on to multifamily, Reggie?
Yeah, one of the things too, uh, up to 4 units is considered still, you could be under one mortgage. So the benefit of multifamily is, let's say you did a single family home, you got a mortgage of 100,000. Now you have a mortgage of 100,000 you have to pay back with one rent, right? So, but if you have a duplex or a triplex or even a quadplex, up to four could still be under one mortgage. When it's five and over, that's when it's commercial real estate and stuff like that. But let's say you have a duplex. Now, for that same 100,000, you could be charging the same rent for both, and you're getting twice the income. So it's nice to have them. It's just harder to find because most investors snatch them up real fast.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And then on to creative finance, which this is, I guess it's been around, but it's becoming more and more popular nowadays with
Mhm.
the likes of different investors talking about it more and more frequently. And I guess actually, no, the reason for that is the high interest rate environment we find ourselves in right now. It can be hard for investors to get into properties where it cash flows. Whereas a few years ago, we might have had 2, 3, 4% rates. Now the rates are in the, 7, 8, 9 range. So for investors, to acquire a property at a 7% interest rate and to still be able to get it to cash flow can be kind of difficult. So creative finance has started to become more and more popular where there's ways for investors to take over an existing mortgage and to maybe pay out the homeowner. So that's called subject to, where they're taking over the loan, subject to a new owner. And they are continuing the mortgage at whatever rates were previously locked in. So the investor doesn't have to get new rates. They don't have to go through a bank and do, a credit check or provide any financial statements. Maybe the owner may want that, but um, they're taking over an existing loan. That's called subject to, or assuming the loan. And then lastly, the seller finance is where you have an already paid off property and you become the bank. If you're the owner of the property, it's paid off. Instead of selling it, maybe you become the bank and you have an investor pay you monthly for the property that you own. And there could be investments on both, or there could be advantages on both sides. As the buyer of the property and the investor, of course, you don't have the new higher interest rates. You don't have to go through, maybe a bunch of credit checks or get the approval. And as the seller, you're not going to incur a big tax penalty by selling this home and then having this large capital gains tax. Instead, you can get paid over time from the seller, from the buyer, which can save you on taxes. Right. And Renji, is there anything else you want to add there for the creative finance side?
No, I think you explained it well, and I guess I want to explain a little bit about the tax burdens. These tax burdens could be different for every state too, because I know in the state of Oklahoma where I live, capital gains is if you own the property for at least a year, so a little bit, at 13 months, you won't have to worry about capital gains as much as like, and capital gains is more so of a worry if you're doing a flip or something like that, where you bought the property, fix it up within a month or two or something and sell it, then you'll have to worry about capital gains tax and stuff. There are, of course, you could set up your LLC structuring the right way as an S corp or something like that. There's ways to get out around that, but and I know in Illinois, I think it was 5 years and stuff like that. So different states, the time period might be different too. So that's something to look into your own state when you're looking to invest or flip or whatever it may be.
Good point. What about real estate syndication for us? Talk more about that.
Yeah, so syndication is where you go out and find a bunch of investors that have money, but they don't know about real estate, or they don't want to do all the active work of real estate. So what you're doing is you're finding that you want to get into real estate, buying a bunch of properties and stuff like that, but you don't have the money. So what you're doing is you're taking other people's money and investing it into the real estate market. And that's what they call like, so syndication is on a huge level. So if you can YouTube people that do syndication, and usually they have a couple million dollars in the funds and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just people, you're finding people that want to invest into real estate, but they don't want to do the actual active work of buying a house, flipping it up and all that stuff. So you're just getting other people's money to invest, and you're paying them either dividends or a percentage every year, every 6 months, or however you want to set it up. That's up to you, but that's what it usually is. They're getting some kind of return. So for them, it's kind of like passive income. And it's like a passive income retirement strategy, because they don't have to actually go out and actively do all this stuff, but they can give you money because you're the expert, and you just pay them a percentage every year. So they're becoming a bank for you pretty much.
There you go. And then land investment, pretty simple. You're buying a piece of land, and typically you're doing it either with the hopes of that area appreciating, which will obviously help the value just increase. Maybe you're buying the land to eventually put your own real estate property on, and or you're buying land as just a really long term, strategy for having a long term investment, right? Buying land, I guess that's with you hoping it would appreciate, right? Anything else you want to add to the land investment side, Renji?
No, like you said, I just add on to what you said is, if let's say you bought land because it was really cheap, but you want to build on it later when you can afford it. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, you have to pay taxes and make sure you clean up the property and stuff. But if you're not planning to do anything with it for 5, 10 years, it might be worth way more in 10 years than it is now. So you might save the cost there, even though you're paying taxes and stuff. But and then another thing is you can bid that land to developers. I can never say their English.
Developers. I got you.
So, anywho, yeah, for them to bid on, getting the land fixed up, putting down pipes, lines, all that stuff, and you can make money that way too. So there's different ways to do that too. But yeah, basically it's just getting land and selling it and stuff like that.
Perfect. What about commercial real estate? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so commercial real estate is where, when you talk to a lot of real estate investors, that's where they want to end up because it's big, like commercial lots. Like if you go to a restaurant that's in a chain of different things, that's a
Like
whole
the
commercial
plaza.
property. Yeah, like a plaza and stuff like that that has a bunch of different stores or restaurants and stuff in it. What these people are doing, the investor just owns that plot, that building. Now all these restaurants and stores and stuff that are in there are paying them rent monthly, which when it comes to commercial real estate, they make way more money. The problem though is when COVID happened, a lot of commercial real estate investors suffered a lot because everyone went from work. I mean, other than restaurants and stuff like that, a lot of jobs went to working from home. So commercial real estate took a big hit when COVID happened. Now that's why a lot of times you'll see jobs that will try to make you come back to work. It's because they're paying rent on those properties, and they can't physically, it's not okay in their mind to pay all that rent and not have employees come in. So that's why you'll see a lot more jobs mandating people coming back to work and stuff like that. But
What's crazy too is, yeah, and what's crazy too is like prior to COVID,
Mhm.
most commercial real estate investors saw it as super safe too, right? Like these businesses are always going to exist. Maybe if one business goes out or goes out of business, they'll just replace it with somebody else, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, COVID quickly, almost overnight, basically turned, a good portion of the business economy to virtual and
yeah,
doing virtual meetings, meeting virtually and realizing, hey, we don't have to pay for this space. We can have everybody virtual. But I
yeah.
think we're at a point in time where like even for my mom's workplace, they're starting to bring them back in because they're missing out on the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the community and just everybody being in touch and
Interaction.
yeah, the interaction because it isn't there 100% when you're virtual. But yeah, that's commercial real estate. The next one on the list was wholesaling, which is actually a great way for beginners in real estate to learn the game, even if you don't have money, because you don't need any money. What you're doing with wholesaling is you are essentially finding a buyer or I'm sorry, you're finding a seller that wants to sell their property, getting the property under a contract, and then you're taking that contract and finding a buyer for it. When you find the buyer for your contract, you're typically saving some room in between the contracts so that you can profit. So if you find somebody that wants to sell their house for $100,000 and you get that under a contract, you take that $100,000 contract and you sell it to a buyer for $110,000. You're making the $10,000 difference in the middle, and that's what's called wholesaling. Um, Anything to add to that, Reggie? Because I know you have some experience in wholesaling, and we tried to do it together before.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It's essentially um, being a realtor without the license, kind of.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of realtors that don't like wholesaling because they think it's unethical. But honestly, it's really what you're doing. Like you said, you're finding a property and selling, or finding a buyer to the end buyer to buy it, and um, and that's how I actually got into real estate investing. When I first got into real estate investing, we were trying to wholesale, and every property, and this is a good way to go look at properties too, and that way you can get a view of how, checking out a property, looking at damages and stuff like that, so you can kind of calculate how much the end buyer might have to put into it to fix it up and what the end value might be. And even if you're the one who's going to keep the property, at least now you know, hey, how much would I have to spend to fix up this property? And at the end of that, what would my after repair value or ARV would be so that I can get that from the bank when I refinance, and all of those things that you could do. So like me, and at the time my partner and I had some friends I would go with. I would take people that knew how to fix things up with me. That way, they can walk through the property with me, and they could tell me, he's like, "Hey, this is something I would fix up. This is how much it would cost if I fix it up, and all that stuff." So you're just learning from other people. That way, you get more experience. So the more properties you go walk, even if you're not going to buy it, hey, the owner might not know you were going to buy it or not. At least you get the this is free education, right? So it's just taking time. So if you don't have the money, but you have the time, this is how you can spend some time learning. And yeah, that's how we got into real estate investing. It originally was wholesaling.
And then tell us about bird dogging because that goes hand in hand.
Yeah, bird dogging is something even simpler. So if you find a distressed property, let's say you're driving down the street and they call it driving for dollars too. So let's say you're driving down a neighborhood and you see a house that's boarded up or overgrown weeds and it's not taken care of, and some investors are looking for properties. Let's say you show them that property, and of course you have to make a deal with the investor. Hey, if I find you properties, you pay me for every property you close. You pay me $500 or $1,000 or whatever deal you make with them. Now, every time you find a property that looks distressed, let's say you give that to your investor, and if they close on that property, they pay you 500 to 1,000 or whatever the deal you made with them. That's bird dogging. Easy. You can just drive, find properties, write down the address. If you want, you can take pictures on the outside, whatever it may be. Now you take it to the investor. That's all you do. It's easy. Wholesaling, I would say, is like the next level of that. Again, both of these, you don't need to spend money on it, other than maybe gas money, right? So,
Yeah.
yep.
And that kind of leads us into the last part we're going to talk about is like probably the number one question that people ask when they know that they want to get into real estate is kind of like where to start. And
Mhm.
that answer is, of course, going to vary for everybody. But I think the main two components it comes down to is do you have money to start right now? Are you ready to start? Or do you not have money? You maybe just have time. And if you're on the latter, if you don't have money, but you have some time to be able to, look into real estate, that's where you could start with the, wholesaling, bird dogging, like Renji just talked about, or maybe even the real estate syndication, right? Starting to find these deals and then partner up with people that do have money and in creating a syndication where you guys invest together, where maybe you do the legwork of finding the properties, analyzing the deals, and then somebody else just provides you with the funds you know? And what if somebody does have money, Renji? Where should they start as far as if they do have money ready to invest?
Honestly, it depends on how much time you have too. If even if you have money, how much time do you have? Because a flip could be, if you have experienced contractors and stuff, it could be done in a month. I know investors that can get it done in less than that. But on a typical note, a flip can take a couple months or more. So the problem with that is if that property is mortgaged and you're paying mortgage on it, and you're paying for contractors to do the work, and you're paying for the equipment and all the supplies that needs it's going to cost a lot of money. So the longer that goes, the more funds you need. So if you have funds but don't have the time, you could maybe do like buy either turnkey or buy a property that's already fixed up. So now you just have to place renters in it and stuff like that. That's actually how we got into. So I said wholesaling is how we started, but we ended up not ever doing a wholesale deal because at the time I was working as a nurse. So before I could even get a property under contract, there were cash buyers that would buy them all up in cash. So what we did is we had equity in our home that we live in. So we got an equity line of credit, and our first couple properties, like I said before, were Section 8. That's how we got into real estate. So it really depends on how much time you have, how much money you have, because you don't want to, just because you have money, you don't want to waste it either, right? So you want to see how much time you have to spend on investing or what type of investing you want to do. But like I said, if you have money or not, a good way to learn is just going and looking at properties. and that way you can kind of put a number on, okay, this needs to be fixed. Oh, that drywall is messed up. It will cost me about this much and this much labor hours. So you can kind of put the more and more you do that, you can kind of put an idea of in your brain of, okay, it's going to take me this much time to fix this house up, and it's going to cost me this much to fix this house up. So now you know your budget, so there's different things like that you got to consider. Yeah, so honestly, it's a different answer for everyone. It really depends on, if, like you said before, if you don't have the money, wholesaling and bird dogging is the best way to go. And syndication is good too, but I wouldn't jump into syndication unless you have some experience in real estate, because a lot of people won't trust you with their money unless
That
you,
makes sense.
yeah, unless it's
Yeah.
like dad or mom or grandparents or something that have money and you want to get into something. That's one way, but to do an actual syndication, which is on like I said, a whole nother level, like up to a couple $1 million funds, a lot of people won't trust you unless you've been doing real estate.
Yeah. Awesome. Perfect. Well, Renji, is there anything else you want to round us out with for today's show? Otherwise, I think this was a good recap of the different ways to get into real estate and education and information on each way.
Yeah. I think there's a few more things we might not have talked about. I think we've covered tax liens and stuff like that on different, but these are the simple ways to do real estate. And guys, the biggest thing is do something, take action, because we've talked about this many times. And I know Kyle and I have had this issue. There's people like me out there that will do all the research in the world but never take action, right? The knowledge is out there, and you just have to take action to get to the result that you want. If you don't take action and you know everything about everything, what does that benefit you? Right? So you got to take action no matter what it is. If real estate investing is not your way to passive income, there's so many different ways out there. The biggest thing is take action, because even if you don't know what you're doing, you take action, you're gonna learn. That might just be the hard way, but you'll learn. And there's also people you can learn from, because there's mentors you can learn from, people that have made those mistakes and have experience, so you don't make the same mistakes. So mentors might cost a lot of money, but if you think about it, it's probably cheaper than you making those mistakes and wasting more money and time. So there,
Absolutely.
just take action is what I would end with.
I love it. And that's a great way to wrap up this show. This was another recording of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. My name was Kyle Demian. This was Renji Matthew. Our social media accounts will be linked below in this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if this is how you guys are consuming us. And until the next time, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good one.